Okay. Goedemiddag, good afternoon. Good to have you all here in my first session on PowerPivot. My name is Casper de Jonge. I'm Program Manager at the Microsoft Analysis Services team based out of Redmond. It's good to be here in Europe to show you all the things that we have done. I'm going to shamelessly self-promote all the other sessions that I'm doing, because what will happen today is I have one session on PowerPivot today, and this shows you our Microsoft BI stack in the hands of the business user. What can you do with PowerPivot, and what is PowerPivot meant for? Right after this, you have to really run hard, because 30 minutes right after this session, I'll have the next session where we look at PowerPivot, or the same things in the hands of the BI professional. When this PowerPivot workbook has become so popular in the hands of the BI users that you want to take it over as a BI department. That's going to be the next session after this. I think it's in E107. Then tomorrow morning, rise and shine, because we're going to do DAX. We're going to look at what is the DAX functionality, what are the calculation language that we have for PowerPivot. So there's a session on that. And after that, in the afternoon, I have a session on how do you actually optimize your BI professional tabular model that we have created when you want to use it for Power View. So those are all the sessions, and I've taken kind of the same business case, use case all along those sessions, but every time from a different angle. Okay, so let's get started. What we are going to do mainly today is demos. And this is actually the only slide that I have. So, well, it's not completely true. I have an introduction to the demo slide. So let's get started. Let's see if I can know how to switch this thing over. So I'm immediately switching over to Excel. So I'm a data analyst. I'm working in Contoso Communications. We sell products all over the world. But unfortunately, sales haven't been going that well. So we want to start a marketing campaign, and we want to know who are we going to target. Who are those customers that are letting us behind? Who are not giving us the revenue that we want? And my task is to find out where this revenue comes from and how we can increase this revenue. So I went to the IT department and asked them, hey, can you give me a report? Unfortunately, they didn't have time. Of course, that's how it works. They have other projects, 3 weeks of work, and I can be served in 4 weeks. That's how it works. But they have given me PowerPivot, and they have supplied me with the data that I can actually do it myself. That's what we call self-service BI. Because it's also an IT project, which is just really a short-lived IT project, a BI project. I just want to use this data. I want to find out where we can target a marketing campaign and then throw it away. And that's not something that we want to spend our IT resources on, because that's going to be inexpensive. If it's IT, then it's a project. We have dates. We have all kinds of documents that need to be written. Now it's just a one-time thing. So I'm going to use PowerPivot to get my own data. So what I have here is Excel 2010. And before we continue, let me just ask a question. Who here already works with PowerPivot? Okay, about half. Who here has seen the new PowerPivot in SQL Server 2012? Okay, almost the same people, so that's good. So we had PowerPivot in the previous release of SQL Server 2008 R2 already, and we've upgraded it now with SQL Server 2012. PowerPivot is a free add-in, as long as you have Office 2010. You can go to powerpivot.com, download it, and install it. And as soon as you do that, you will get this ribbon showing up inside Excel. So this is the PowerPivot ribbon. And what I can do with PowerPivot is mash up data. I can get data from all kinds of different places and start doing analytics on top of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by connecting to my data market, to the data mart that is being supplied to me by my IT department. And what I can do is I can connect to all kinds of sources. So this is our different ribbon, and what you see is now we have two different dialogues. One is the Excel dialog, and the second one is our PowerPivot for Excel dialog, which lives inside Excel. So what I can do is I can import. In this case, I'm going to use from other sources, so I can show you what kind of data source we support. We have SQL Server, Azure, Parallel Data Warehouse, Access, Oracle, Teradata, Sybase, and of course all the ODBC supported data sources. Now, of course, we support our own stuff. reports, Azure Data Market, other data feeds, Excel files, tech files. So those things you can all mash up and import. And I'm going to show you today a few examples of this. In this case, we're going to start by importing SQL Server. So I'm going to connect to my SQL Server instance. And I'm going to connect to my data mart. Next, and now I can select two different ways to import. I can either select from a list of tables, or I can write my own query to get the data in. In this case, I'm going to be lazy and select a list from a list of tables. For those of you who have already been using SQL Server and have tried this before, PowerPivot has tried this before, what we now can do is finding a table in this big list can be pretty hard. So what you now can do is just a small tweak. You can now start typing. So you can immediately go to the tables that you want. So in this case, we go to dim product. We want to have dim subscriber, dim time, and dim political geography. And now we can select those tables, and of course, we want to have a fact table where all the rows are being stored. In this case, we're going to select view fact subscriber invoices. And I'm going to quickly show you a few minor improvements that we made. For example, the first improvement was that you can actually start typing. Just minor things, but I'm just telling you because those of you who have already been using it and tried it before will probably never try it again. So now, that's why I'm showing this. And the other thing is I can change the name before we actually import, and I can preview and filter. And by clicking preview and filter, what you can do is you can actually minimize the subset, because probably you don't need all the data. You might need only the current year or the previous year or just a small subset. Because PowerPivot will load everything into memory, it is memory consuming. And although PowerPivot applies a compression when the data gets imported, you can still get into trouble if you load in 200 million, 400 million rows. So you might want to filter it down. So what you can do is filter here. And if you improve filtering. So for example, what you can do now is click on the filter, click on text filters, and now we have more than just equals and does not equal. We have begin with, end with, contains, custom filters. And whenever you create it visually here, we will automatically translate it into SQL under the covers for you. And the same thing goes for all the other providers that we have. So we automatically translate it into the provider language the language that the provider speaks. So I can now say, for example, contains WA, and now you'll automatically see only the states that contain WA. And we've done the same thing for keys. So we see number filtering. We now have greater than, equal, less than, between. So those are some minor improvements. A bigger improvement that we have done on dates and times. So what you can do as soon as you have a date column in your table, you can now say, date filter, give me only today, tomorrow, yesterday, next month, last month, year to date, and all those kinds of things. So now you can filter this automatically. Okay, let's start importing. So as soon as we start importing this data, it will actually bring all this data into my PowerPivot add-in. And it's not bringing it into Excel, it is actually bringing it into our add-in. And in this add-in, we actually have a completely fully functioning analysis services engine running. And what it is doing now is bringing that data into the analysis services engine. And we can connect to it from Excel and just do pivot tables on top of that. But we have many more things that we can do now with living inside Excel. And the other thing that I mentioned before is when you start importing the data, it will actually start compressing all this data. It will actually look at all the columns that you have inside this table. And then it starts looking at all those columns and see, hey, do we have a lot of the same values in there? And if you have a lot of the same values, replace those same values with just a pointer to the single value. So it automatically compresses very, very much. One thing to notice here, if you have a high cardinality column like a key or an ID and you never use it, those are the columns that take up most of the space because there's not much to compress there. So if you don't need it, remove it. And it will save you a lot of space. But in general, a compression rate of 1 to 10 can be applied. And we've seen much higher compression ratios depending on the data. If you want to know more about this, there is already a session that has already been done by Dave Wickert, I think yesterday, on optimizing your tabular models for performance and scale. If you missed it, it's going to be online at the TechEd, so watch that. If if you want to know much more details about what happens when the data is imported and processed and all those things. It's a very deep dive level on what's happening in our engine. Okay. So now close, and we have the data inside PowerPivot. So you can see it looks very much like Excel. We have tables in here. We have political geography, product, dim time, view subscriber, invoices. And now this is one view. And this is what we had in SQL Server 2008 R2. But in SQL Server 2012, we now have something new called the diagram view. And this shows you in a visual way what the model looks like. And for those of you who have been working with multidimensional models in the past or still do that, you will notice as a data source view because it looks very similar. There's one big difference between a multidimensional cube and PowerPivot, because when you import the data in here, this is actually the data, and it's also the data that the end users will see. So this is the model. The tables that you see, that is the model, and that's why it makes it so easy. So you can have a visual view, and what you now need to do, because we need to create relationships. Very often, if you use direct SQL Server tables, you will get the relationships if they are defined. In my data source, there are no relationships defined because I used views, so I need to do it myself. And there's another way which I'll show you later. What you can do is do right mouse click, create relationship, and you get the relationship dialog, the same one as we had in 2008 R2, but you can also just drag and drop. And now it will automatically create the relationship for me. And I can do the same thing for time key to invoice date key, and my political geography is being connected to subscriber home location, and product I'm leaving blank on purpose. Okay, so I've created relationships, I've imported the data, we're ready to do analytics. We're good to go. So now I just created a pivot table by just clicking on create me a pivot table, and it created a pivot table for me inside Excel. And on the right, you now immediately see our PowerPivot list. And you see all the tables that we just imported. One thing to notice here as well, it's again one of those small changes. Before, the tables were kind of randomly ordered in the PowerPivot field list. They were actually not randomly ordered. They were ordered the way that they came into the database. But we now have made them alphabetical. So it's a little bit easier to find. And the other thing that you might notice, we now have a search bar. So what we want to do is we want to add revenue. So add revenue, press enter, and now we automatically go to the revenue column. And what I can now do is just check it. And now it automatically created an aggregation for me. It automatically created sum of revenue for me. And this is the sum of revenue of my entire table of 600,000 rows. I know it's not that much, but it still was pretty fast. Even if you import 200 million rows, you do the simple aggregations like this, it's going to be blazing fast. Because everything that we have done is now in memory. All the data that we read in is in memory in my database. So we've added the revenue, but what actually happened here? Because we need to have some form of aggregation, right? If you click it, if you click a column and we understand that it's an integer or a decimal value, we automatically understand that we need to aggregate this. So what happens is under the covers, we create a measure for you, an aggregation. And we say the sum of revenue is now aggregated using sum. And under the covers, we've created a DAX formula. That is our query language, our formula language that we have inside PowerPivot. And we automatically created a measure for this. And it automatically did the sum of fact subscriber invoices revenue. I didn't have to do anything. And we can change this to count, min, max, average. All those things are available. I can just change it here. Okay, what else? The other thing that I want to show is I want to have a device type, and I want to slice by it. So we have, this is a native Excel 2010 function called slicers, and I want to slice by it. So I click on it, and nothing happens. So what's going on? So you don't see anything change, but PowerPivot has actually detected this. And PowerPivot now actually sees that we didn't have a relationship between that fact table and the product table. I didn't create one on purpose. Because PowerPivot now automatically detects it and says, hey, do you want to create one? Sure, let's try it out. And it's now starting to detect the relationship and it's actually creating a relationship. So it has detected the relationship between product key and the fact table and product key of the product key, and it created it for me. It doesn't work for everything, but it can detect quite a lot of relationships. So I press and close, and now you automatically see it works. So out of the box, it just worked. Okay, sum of revenue. What else? Well, we want to see the revenue by month. Again, I start typing, I drag in month name, and it's nicely sorted on alphabet. Is that what we want? Is that how you want to sort a month? No. But that is, in SQL Server 2008 R2, you had to go to all kinds of interesting tricks to make the sorting right. You had to add a number and those kinds of things. There was no way to add natural sort order. Now we can. You go back to the PowerPivot window, to the data sheet, and here's my month name. And we have a button now, sort by auto column. I click on this, and I say I want to sort month name by my month column. And the month column is a nicely integer value where I can get good sorting from. Press OK. Go back. And now PowerPivot automatically detected we changed something in the model. So we can press refresh. And now you see sorting is done correctly. Okay. Let's move this to our column labels and let's continue. Because I want to see it by geography. I want to see my revenue by geography. I want to see my revenue by months. I want to start investigating where things go wrong in our organization. So I can do two things. I can just drag in columns, what I want, but I want to be able to drill up and down. So what I can do in my model is creating a hierarchy. So I go back to the PowerPivot window, switch to the diagram view, and in the diagram view is the place where we do modeling, where we do pure modeling operations, like creating a hierarchy and creating relationships very easily. If you want to work with data, like if you want to create your own measure, if you want to change data types and things like that, then you can go to the data grid, data view. So what I can do here is I can click on my maximize button, and this will actually bring my political geography table straight to me, and fully focused. So I can really work with this table. What I can do is just click this create hierarchy button, and it'll create the hierarchy for me. Let me say geography. And let's select country, region, and city. Let's scroll down. Oh. And we just drag them on top of this. Now it automatically created my hierarchy. And for those of you who are familiar with multidimensional will wonder, so first of all, how did it determine the order like it is right now? And second of all, what happens if I change it? So the first thing is PowerPivot automatically looks at the data that is inside the model. So it actually sees that we only have one country. We have 6 different regions and 80 cities. And that makes sense to create a hierarchy based on the order that is actually inside the data. So it automatically created this for me. I can change it if I want. I can now drag order down and I do country below city. If you were to do this in our multidimensional environment, this wouldn't be able to work. Because in multidimensional, we have very strong hierarchies. If the attribute relationships don't line up, you have a problem. In PowerPivot, we're much more forgiving. So you can do whatever you want. It's your data. So I can move it back. And now we've created a hierarchy. Let's go back in and take a look. Refresh. And now we see the geography has turned up. What I'm going to do is drag it in into row labels. And now we see automatically the country, USA, and the regions Central, East, North, South, and West. I can open it up again, and we can just zoom into all the details. Okay. So what's next? Well, actually, it's pretty hard to actually see something here, right? There's so much numbers and data. So the first thing that I want to be able to see is how does these regions actually contribute to the total? So what is their ratio to the parent? And there are 2 ways that I can do this. I can create a DAX formula in our formula language, or I can just use native Excel. Today I'm going to use native Excel, and tomorrow morning in my DAX session I'll show you how to do this in DAX. What you can do now is just go ahead, pick up revenue again, drag it in, and then it will create a second sum of revenue. And now we're going to just use native Excel pivot table functions. Right mouse click, value field settings. This is native pivot table. It has nothing to do even with PowerPivot. This is just Excel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do percentage and show values as percentage of row total. Press OK, and now it automatically shows us the percentage of row total. So I just used Excel. I didn't have to do anything. But again, this doesn't give us the visual interface that I want. I want to quickly be able to see which regions are doing much better than others. So I want to add some visual elements, a chart. So I'm going to again click on pivot table, but now I'm not going to insert a pivot table, but a pivot chart. I'm going to put it on the existing worksheet. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. And now we're going to add dim time, month name. I'm going to add my geography. And of course, I want to add my revenue. So this immediately shows us that the revenue of our entire organization has been going down. But what was the underlying sales, the revenue per region? What I can do now is, because it's a hierarchy, I can just double click on USA. I will automatically zoom down. So now you can immediately see the per region. And again, this is not native PowerPivot functionality. This is just Excel. But because we hooked up the two up together, you can now use the combined forces of Excel and Analysis Services Engine. So under the cover, what we did is when you create a chart, PowerPivot automatically creates a secondary sheet that actually contains all the data. You can hide this on your own if you want to, or you can also use this trick on your own purposes, because we don't support all the chart types that Excel has to offer in 2010. For example, Excel 2010 supports spark lines and things like that. We don't have this out of the box, but it's pretty easy to hack that in. You can create your own table with data and put a chart line on top of that. It's pretty easy to find out. There are several blog posts out there that actually show you how to do it. So you can use and leverage the functionality of Excel on top of the data that you have from PowerPivot. Okay, so I'm going to hide this. So we see the revenue is not good for Central and South, and it's a little bit better for North and West, and it's best for East. But is this something that we can rely on? Because what was actually expected? What was the revenue that was expected? What were they expected to do? So what we're going to do is we're going to compare the actual revenue against the target revenue that was determined for them. And this target revenue that was determined, we don't have in our data warehouse yet. So what I have here is a single table inside Excel where I just copied from someone else, where I have regions, target per month, and year. And the interesting thing here is this is just completely different than anything else in my database, because that was nicely formed fact table with dates on every date level. We have connections with cities. We have complete different granularity. So it's completely different, but still we will be able to tie them up together. And what I'm going to show you is one of the learnings that I had when I started with PowerPivot. Because the most important thing, and that's a big difference between BI professionals and people who build BI solutions for a large enterprise and business users. The difference is, if you build your model or your cube or whatever for your organization, it has to stand the test of time. You can throw any data at it and it still has to be able to process it, it still has to be able to work. In this case, a business user just needs a solution, and it needs it tomorrow or the day after. So it just has to work for this one time, and next year we'll see again. We don't expect this to happen. So that's a very different problem statement that they have. It just has to work. And with PowerPivot, you can do a lot of that. So I'm going to show you how this works. So what I want to do is I want to add this data to PowerPivot. And what I can do is I can click on the PowerPivot ribbon. And I'm going to click on the button, Create Linked Table. And this will bring this table into my PowerPivot model. So now we're meshing up data that I'm just typing in Excel with my data that came from SQL Server. So I'm going to rename it. I'm going to call it target. And I'm going to create a relationship. I'm not going to create a relationship between year and, because the granularity is just so much different, I'll solve it in a different way. So we created a relationship, we added it, and the interesting thing is if I now go back in and I were to change things here, let's say I'm changing this to 320. Now go back to PowerPivot. You see that was actually working, and now the data is being 320. So it's automatically updating. As soon as you change it, it automatically updated in PowerPivot as well. Sorry, let's change it back. And we now see it's back. Okay, so let's create a pivot table on top of this. So I'm create a pivot table, existing worksheet, and I'm going to add my region, my target per month, and I'm going to add revenue. And we see that the relationship works, right? We see now the revenue is nicely per region and also the sum of target per month. But now I'm adding my dim time. And you will see that we have the same repetition all over again for every month that we have. So we can fix it in two ways. We can model very complex things into it so that we can actually create a relationship, or we can do a practical approach. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to use our DAX formula language to actually look at, do we actually have revenue for this month? If that is the case, show me target value. So we're going to take a different approach. So what I'm going to do is right mouse click, new measure, and now we're going to add a DAX measure. And this is going to call target, just call target. And what I'm now doing is just a formula which very much looks like the Excel language. If not is blank, sum of revenue, and I'll explain it in some more details in a minute, do a sum of target per month. Otherwise, return blank. So what this thing will do is it will actually look at the current cell that we have inside the pivot table, and do we have a revenue in this month? If so, show me the target per month. Otherwise, return blank. And blank is always, by default, omitted by Excel. Just ignored and won't be shown. You can change your pivot table if you want to show them, but by default, it's not. And the other thing that we can now do is add formatting. So measures is something we had in 2008 R2 as well, but now you can apply formatting to your measure. Before, you had to drag in your measure and reapply formatting every time inside Excel, and it's just very annoying. Now you can just apply formatting on your measure, and when you drag it into Excel, it automatically applies the formatting for you. So I'm going to click on currency, and because this will return a currency value, press OK. And now we see it only shows up in 2010. Okay, now we want to compare the two. And we can again do this in multiple ways. We can compare it creating a DAX formula. We can use an Excel. But what I want to do now is create a KPI. I want to create a KPI on top of this. But before we create a KPI, there's something you need to know when you want to create KPIs. If you want to create KPIs, you need to have real measures. And you would think, well, we have real measures here, right? But it's actually not true, because when I drag in the revenue, it automatically created a measure for me. And those are not real measures. Those are what we call implicit measures. Those are hidden measures. So let's say I want to go in and do add new measure, sum of revenue. Do we do sum, view, fact, subscriber, invoices, revenue? Check formula will be fine. But if I press OK, it will say, hey, a measure already exists. But PowerPivot doesn't think it's a real measure. So that's a kind of a tricky concept. But what I can do is I can remove this guy. I can go to my PowerPivot window, and I can search for this measure. But you're not going to find it by default. So you cannot see this measure. What you can do is you can click on here and switch to an advanced mode. And this is also new in SQL 2012. And here we have some options. And one of them is show implicit measures. So when you click on this thing, and now we're going to search, we will actually see them. These are the hidden things automatically created by Excel. And sometimes they are in your way when you want to create your own stuff. For example, it might be obvious that you actually want to create your own sum of revenue. And you cannot find it anymore. There's no way to create it. Here is where you can find it. In this case, I'm going to delete it. And I'm going to create my own. And I can do this in two ways. And we'll come back to the rest later. I can click on the column, do AutoSum. And it will automatically create a real measure for me. You see there's a different icon. Oh. Different icon between the two. And that's another thing that I want to show you. We now have a calculation area in the bottom. And the calculation area is something that is quite strange to many BI professionals. But what actually happened is when we introduced PowerPivot, a lot of people who wanted to start with DAX and wanted to create measures started, because they're Excel users, they're used to this interface. What they started to do was just click here and start typing on the right. But this is actually something completely different. What you have on the right is a calculated column. And a calculated column is created to enrich your model. And I'll show you some demos of this later. And tomorrow morning in the DAX session, we'll go into much more details on what is the difference between a calculated column and a measure. But if you start typing in an aggregation formula here, you will get into trouble later. So what we've done is we've done some usability study with Excel users and asked them, okay, let's say you need to create an aggregation. What would you do? Well, many Excel users, what would they do? Just go to the bottom and say sum. Or start typing at the bottom, because that's what they're used to. So this is really meant for the Excel user who wants to start working with PowerPivot and needs to understand what's the difference between a measure and a calculated column. And I'll show you a demo of this later. Just want to give you a little bit of background to why this thing is here. Because, as I said, BI professionals don't really like it. And in my next session, you'll see why as well. Okay, so we've created a real measure now. You can go back, and PowerPivot now understands the data was modified. We do refresh. Scroll down, and now we actually see the real measure. And now, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but as you click on the measure now, you see that Create KPI is now enabled, which was disabled before. And it was disabled because it wasn't a real measure. Okay, so now we can create a KPI. And for a KPI, we can do two things. We have a KPI-based measure. We need two things. We have the actual value that you want to target against. So this is the base value, and I want to target against another measure or an absolute value. In case sometimes you might have a percentage, you want to say, I want the absolute value to compare it against 100% or whatever you want to do. In this case, we actually have a target value. So I'm going to use the sum of revenue, and I'm going to target against the target value. And now I can set my thresholds. And what I can do here is I can do two things. I have either the 3 thresholds or the closer to target threshold if you are in a manufacturing business or something like that, where you need to be closer to target and not outside of the target. In this case, I'm going to have a simple threshold where I want to say, if it's 100% on target, you're good to go, 100% or more. If it's 75% on target, between 75 and 100, you're okay. If it's below 75, you're in trouble. And you can also switch those around if you want to. In certain countries, actually, red means good and green means bad. So you can switch it around. And the other thing you can do is select your icon style. I usually like to pick this guy. And the other thing that we can do with all the objects as of SQL Server 2012 is add descriptions. So for example, I can do if target is 100%, we're good. And I can add descriptions everywhere else. We can add descriptions now on all objects, like tables, columns, measures, KPIs, and all of that. And they will show up. And if I press OK and we create it, I'll show you. They also show up in the field list. So you can see now that we have the description here when I hover over it. And it's in here, but it's also in Power View. If you connect this model to Power View, you'll also see the same thing. Okay, So we have target, we have the value, and we see the status now. So what we see here is that Central is not doing good. East is doing a little bit better. North is doing great. South and West are okay. Kind of looks like the chart we had here as well. So it kind of confirms it. The question that I have about this is this actually true? Do those targets actually make sense? Because I know this data. I'm a business user. I work with this day in, day out. So what I want to be able to do is actually see what is my revenue per subscriber. Because I actually think the targets doesn't make any sense. So what I want to do is I want to create a new measure that allows us to see how many subscribers did we actually have in this month for this region that actually made up this revenue. And then I want to see how much revenue did we have per subscriber. So I'm going to add some DAX formulas. I'm going to do new measure. And what I want to do is I want to see a distinct count of subscribers. Subscribers. And what I can do now is a new function we introduced in SQL 2012 is called distinct count. And what I can do now is I can use a distinct count on the subscriber key that we have in my table. Because what happens if in each and every cell it automatically filters down to whatever is on the rows. In this case, all the values that you see in this cell are June 2012 for Central, right? It's automatically filtered. So in this case, that will happen as well. And this is a pretty important concept in DAX. And again, tomorrow morning in my session on DAX, I'll go into much more details about how DAX actually works and how you can use those measures and what actually happens. In this case, I'll show you it just works. So we have a distinct count of subscriber key, which is now automatically calculated for June 2012 in this case. For those of you who are familiar with multidimensional, know that this is pretty hard to do. And this is very easy in Tabular Model. Another quick tip that I want to show you is, you see sum of revenue status takes up a lot of space, right? It's pretty annoying. And when I make it smaller, and let's say I remove this guy, it will now automatically become large again. This is one of the characteristics of Excel. What you can do to make this better is, if you make it smaller, right mouse click on the pivot table options, and in the pivot table, turn off auto fit columns width on update. I do this all the time and it saves a lot of time. Press OK. Now when I remove something or add something back, you see it just being kept the way it is, the way that I created it. OK. So we now have a distinct count of subscribers, and we see Central actually had only 10,000 users. East had 33,000 users. Let me see if I can change this. Yeah, use a 1,000 separator. Okay, so we have 10,000, 33,000. But how much revenue did they actually make? Create a new measure, and I can do sum of revenue divided by distinct count of subscribers. This is rev per sub. It's going to be a currency. Press OK. And now we know the revenue per subscriber. I don't need the distinct count anymore. Now we know the revenue per subscriber. And if you actually look at if you actually look at the KPIs, we can see the red ones have a very low number. So Central had $86 per subscriber. East had $98. North had $108. But South had $73 per subscriber. And this thing is actually saying it's doing good. So something is fishy. So I think we should probably, that's one of the areas that we should investigate in is, if we want to improve our revenue, let's go ahead and look at this revenue per subscriber. And why do we actually think that with $73 you're actually doing good and better than the $68? So that's an interesting avenue that we want to go and look for. While I'm looking at this revenue per subscriber, I want to dig in a little bit deeper to whatever subscribers are doing and who are our subscribers. And I want to match that up with our revenue. So what I can do, our team, our IT team, has created some data feeds for me. Some data that I can use to mesh up with the data that I want to use. In this case, what they have created for me is a subscriber clustering. They have clustered our subscribers together, and they've looked at the characteristics of each and every subscriber, and they looked at them and said, what is the cluster for that, and how likely are they to churn, meaning leaving us? How likely are these customers to leave us? And they've created a data mining model in multidimensional mode, and they've exposed that to me in a data feed that I can just consume. And I'll show you this in a second. And in my session after this, I will show you how you can create one of those feeds. Not really related with our BS semantic model, but it's good information to know. So I'm going to add that information to my PowerPivot model. So what I can do is I go to SharePoint, and I have a data feed here called subscriber clustering. Press OK. We're going to open it, save, open it, and now it asks me, select a workbook to import the Atom feed to. In this case, I want to add it to my existing workbook, one that I'm working with. And now it says table import wizard. So we do cluster, next. We're going to call the table churn, and press finish. And now it's going to contact actually my data mining model that I created on the same machine, which I'll show you in tomorrow's session how you can actually build that. But it's going to connect it to it, and it's going to pull that data into my PowerPivot workbook. So it's importing. Here come the rows. And we have 138,000 rows. So now we have per subscriber the clustering. And the clustering is things like he's a loyal customer, he's a solid customer, he's open for churning, or he's likely to churn. So we've mashed up more data now from multiple different places. And the thing that I now need to do is create a relationship again between subscriber and the likelihood to churn. Just drag it in, and here we are. That's all we needed to do. Now let's go back and start using it. So I'm creating an existing workbook. We add churn, and we're going to add revenue. I didn't have to do anything, right? It just worked. I just imported some data from another data source, created one relationship, and now I'm able to, from the data mining information that got to me, I can now see the revenue for that level. So the interesting thing here to notice is our most loyal customers are the ones who bring us the least amount of money. So again, this might be an interesting avenue for our marketing team to go to our most loyal customers and find a way how to boost the revenue. And the guys who already churned are the ones who give us the most revenue. So probably this means they had to pay the most amount of money and they left. And the loyal customers are the ones who didn't have to pay a lot of money and they're happy with us. So our marketing team has a long way to go. The other thing that I want to do is I want to be able to slice it by political geography. So I pick up my geography and drag it into slicers. Now it automatically creates 3 slicers because I created this hierarchy. So I can zoom in, let's say on Aberdeen. And the other thing that I want to be able to see is, okay, so I zoomed in, who are these customers? So what I can do is just double click, and it will open the underlying data from my fact table. We now can immediately see who these customers are and what they have for data. So it automatically drilled down. The drill down functionality is there. What did happen is you can only drill down to the fact table. So there's no way to configure this or find another drill down way to go yet. But you can go to your fact table, you can drill down, you can see the more results, you can see it automatically apply the filtering. For example, we selected city Aberdeen, right? And automatically added that to the filter and drilled down. Okay. So we see loyal customers, sum of revenue. Let's add something else to the mix. I want to see for these loyal customers or these clusters, how long were they actually member of our organization? How long were they active? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at it from a different level. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to work in the data view. And what I want to do is I want to compare my invoice date against my service activation date. So I'm dragging it to the front. But there's one problem here. These are both integer values. And it's not much, they're not meaningful. they don't mean anything. The real meaning of these columns are in a different table. So it's going to be hard to compare again. So what I can do is I can bring the meaningful data into this table and start comparing it. So if you go right mouse click and navigate to a related table, you see that here's actually a date column. So let's bring that date column into this table. So I'm going to do is right mouse click, insert column, another small new feature that we added. And what I'm going to do is equals related dim time date. And this will actually use DAX. This will actually use the relationship that we just created between the two and get the data from this other table and bring it into this table, following the relationship that we created. Press enter. And now I'll do this for each and every row inside this table. And now we see the actual date. And this is invoice date. Now the interesting thing here is the second one is actually also a relationship to the other table. So what we have introduced in SQL 2012 is a secondary relationship to the same table. So what I can do now is service activation date. I can also create a relationship with this thing, with the other table. And now we see we have two relationships. But one is a solid line and the other one is a dotted line. So what's the difference between the two? Well, the solid line is the active relationship. And that is the relationship that is by default traversed by DAX and by Excel. The dotted line is the one that is actually inactive. And inactive relationships can only be used together with DAX. So unfortunately, the related function that I just used is I am unable to use using an inactive relationship. If you want to know more how you can use inactive relationships, come to my DAX session tomorrow. I'll go into much more details about that. Now I'm going to show you how you can actually get the data from the other table now without using related. So what I'm going to do is insert another column. I'm just going to use another DAX function. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look up the value, very similar to the Excel function VLOOKUP. Look up the value from my dim time table and give me the date column where my dim time time key is equal to my service activation date key. So we just look up in another table where the time key is equal to the service activation date key. Very straightforward function. Press enter, and I will return us the date key, the actual date column. So this is service date. And the thing that I want to do now is I want to subtract one from the other. So add another column where I'm going to do equals invoice date minus service date. Press enter. And now it will subtract one from the other. And now we get a date, just a date value. The problem is, of course, we don't want to see the days in between. How many days did we actually have between the two columns? What we can use here is just the default Excel trick. Because what actually happens, and PowerPivot is very much based on how Excel does things. In Excel, a date is not really a date. It's a decimal value. And the decimal value in Excel is, what are the dates since, I think it's 1899 or something. The date since 1899 and then move over to a date column. In SQL Server, we are used to real dates. You can do 1600, you can do 1200. In Excel, you cannot do that. And it's the same way with PowerPivot. We are very much based on Excel. We actually even used a lot of functions directly copied and pasted over from the Excel code. But what we can do in Excel, we can move it back to a decimal value. So what I'm going to do, and this is just a thing that I found on an Excel forum, I can do times 1 dot. And this makes it into a decimal value again. And this will give us the actual days in between. Typical Excel trick that we can now use in our PowerPivot. So this means days active. But this is such a big variation that it's very hard to get some analytics on top of this. So what I want to do is I want to categorize these columns into meaningful categories. I'm going to insert another column. And now you can see, I hope you can see a little bit of the difference between the calculated column and the measure. A calculated column is something that we add, enrich the model with, and these functions that we add here are being evaluated for each and every row in the table. And the cool thing is, a calculated column, the values that are being evaluated, are actually stored as part of the model. So the things that we store as part of the model are now in memory as well. So as soon as your user starts using this, it's going to be very, very fast because it doesn't have to evaluate or do the function again. It's going to be stored in memory. But the downside is, it is not affected by whatever you put on rows and on columns like a measure is. And that's a big difference. And again, in my session tomorrow on DAX, I'll go into much more details on that. So what I can do is, very simply, if days active is larger than 1,000, it's going to be 3 very long. If, so this is the else statement, if days active is larger than 500, it's going to be 2 medium, else short. And that's it. And now it adds this information to my data set again. I'm going to call it time member. Press enter. Okay, let's start using this again in our analytics. So now we've categorized all our data into how long are they member and how many days do we have active. So let's go in, and it now automatically detected again that PowerPivot data was modified. So I can press refresh. I'll automatically update my field list. And we can scroll down. And now we can see time member, and let's add it to the column labels. And now we can see the actual, let me remove this filter. Now we can see the actual sales per loyal customer and how long they're active. One thing that I don't really like about this is the sum of revenue still doesn't give us a good view of how many subscribers we had and things like that. So I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to add my revenue per subscriber measure. And to make things a little bit more visible, I'm going to just use another Excel thing, conditional formatting. I'm going to just use visual formatting. And now some interesting pattern occurs. Now we immediately see if those who are medium long member of our organization are the ones who give us the best revenue. And the most interesting thing is actually our most loyal customers who are member for a very long time pay us the least amount of money. So our marketing team really has to get a step up here and go to those customers and see how we can get more money out of them. So that's very interesting information. And the other thing that I would like to be able to do is see a little bit more on my likelihood to churn or my time member. And I want to see the days active. I just drag it in, and now we automatically get the sum of days active. But I don't want to see the sum of days active. I want to see an average. So just do right mouse click, summarize by average. So this will give me the average of days active for each and every time that they are a member. And let's add again the revenue per subscriber. Okay, so this is very insightful information. Two more things that I want to show you. So we can go into PowerPivot, and I've quickly showed you the advanced tab. There are two things here that are also very handy. If you have larger models, you can divide them up by creating perspectives. For example, what I can do here is I create a new perspective, and it's defining a view on top of your data. Create a new perspective, call it Geo, and it says I want to only show political geography and my view subscriber invoices. So now I've created a view on top of my data. And I can actually go down and select on the column and measure level as well. In this case, I'm just going to select those two tables. Press OK. And now it's going to show up in two different ways. It's going to show up here. I can actually select it. And now I only see those two tables. So this allows me, if I have a very large model, to divide them up and make it more manageable. The other thing that you can do here now is, if you have a very large table, it might be hard to find things. So what you can do is you can turn off things like columns. So now we're only left with measures, hierarchies, and KPIs. let's turn off hierarchies, KPIs, and we're only left with measures. So it makes it very easy to find things. And what you can do is, whenever you find it, right mouse click and say go to. It automatically goes to the measure that you need to change. So it's a little bit more manageability if you have some larger models. If we go back to our pivot table, we now see a new drop-down appeared. Our perspective drop-down. By default, the default perspective is selected, so that means everything is there. But I can change it, and I can click on Geo, and now we only have 2 tables showing up. So again, a small manageability feature. And the other thing that we have in here is, under the advanced features, is reporting properties. And these reporting properties are, if you want to create a PowerPivot workbook that you want to share on SharePoint, and you want to use PowerView on top of it. These reporting properties allow you to tweak how PowerView is being used on top of this workbook. And I have a session tomorrow at 1 o'clock, a full hour long, which I'll show you what you can do with reporting properties and how you can optimize your PowerPivot and tabular models. And the reason that we have this session is, and we're not showing in too much detail here, is probably the users who are actually building these PowerPivot workbooks don't necessarily want to use these reporting properties, because these are users who actually know this data inside and out. So they know what they can expect. But if you want to build a real model where you want to build PowerView on top of it, you probably want to make sure that when users start using that model who are not as proficient with the data as the business user here, you want to make sure they don't make mistakes. You want to make their life easy. And that's what we're going to do tomorrow. So I won't go into too much details here. I just want to show you that they are here. You can do it if you want. So I now have the data. I want to share it with my team. I want to share to my manager what I've done. So what I can do is I can do File, Save and Send, Save to SharePoint. And now I can save my PowerPivot workbook to SharePoint because I want to share it with my team. And what happens here is that we have a PowerPivot gallery set up in my SQL Server environment where we have PowerPivot workbooks that are living here. In this case, this is our customer profitability model. And you can see it looks very much the same. There's one big difference. This is Internet Explorer. It's now become a hosted web control. It's now becoming a real application. You can process the data. You can refresh the data on SharePoint. You don't have to go in locally and do it. You can set up a schedule, do it every day. A lot of things like interactivity, like slicers, also work. I can just click on my slicer and now it's sliced that into just on the hosted web control. My end users don't need to have Excel. They don't need to have Excel 2010 or PowerPivot installed. You can share it on SharePoint and you're good to go. The other thing that I want to show you is we can go to my PowerPivot gallery, and if you have SQL 2012, you have now create PowerView report on top of it as well. So what we can do is, because I want to report to my management, I want to actually do a presentation on this. So what I can do is I can click on PowerView, and it will now connect to the same model. The model that I created in Excel is now part of the server. And we can see the same tables. We can see the same data. So I can now add my cluster, my sum of revenue, per subscriber, and time member. And we can start making it into some visualizations that I can share inside SharePoint. And now I can start making some information on it. So I can do revenue per time member. Again, make it into a bar chart. So we can just start creating our PowerView report. And it's all very interactive, just on the model that I created inside PowerPivot. But now I want to expose this. I want to start doing a presentation. What I can do now is in PowerView, you can export this to PowerPoint. So now I can make an interactive PowerPoint presentation based on the data that I created. And this very much is always to the delight of upper management. PowerPoint is what they like. So what I can do here is, I've already prepared this. I have a report in PowerPoint. I'm just going to open it. Here you can see the sheet. So make it into presentation mode. And now it's loading. And here we have the Power View report that I created. And I can actually click and make it interactable. So now we're actually inside PowerPoint, make a connection to my SharePoint site. And we can start doing interactivity. But you need to have connection. And the other thing which is interesting as well, if you set up security on a real model, you will also have security filtered down. Because we don't have a security feature inside PowerPivot. You only get that when you go to a professional environment. So I can click on Medium now, and you can see things are starting to filter down. So all of this is now inside PowerPoint. Okay, and so far from my demo. So let's go back. I have a few more slides. Yep, here we go. So what do we see? So we can build richer models with SQL Server 2012. We now have KPIs. We have descriptions. We have formatting that has persisted. We have advanced sorting, sorting on another column. Distinct count. We allow drill through. So you can click on a measure and it will automatically drill through to the underlying table. We have perspectives, hierarchies, multiple relationships, parent-child. I haven't showed you this, but I will show you in tomorrow's DAX session how you can do parent-child in PowerPivot. We have optimized usability, so you can use a diagram view. You can use a measure grid. Various usability enhancements. We have reporting properties. And all of these things are also available in BI Development Studio, in SSDT, as we call it now. So as a BI professional, you can do the same thing. There's one big difference. You're not living inside Excel. If you're a BI professional and you want to use the same ease of use, the same PowerPivot simplicity, you can do the same things inside Visual Studio. But the difference is you're sharing it to a real analysis services server. And the real analysis server doesn't have any size limits. It doesn't have, PowerPivot has a size limit of, I believe, 2 gigabytes, and that's because of SharePoint. SSDT, tabular models that you're doing there don't have any size limits. You can create partitions. You can refresh. The maximum refresh time that we have in PowerPivot for SharePoint is once a day. If you want to have it more, you can create a tabular model in Visual Studio, and you can do it every 5 minutes, every 2 minutes, whatever you want. You can schedule your own things. So this is more if you want to create a quick and easy BI solution inside SSDT. Tabular model is the way to go inside SSDT. So that's the difference between PowerPivot and BI Professional. So my next session, which starts in, I think, 40 minutes, is about that. Let's see. Okay, summary. So a lot of new things that we introduced. SQL 2012 for PowerPivot. Help us help you. Provide feedback. Let me know what you think. Come up front. Let me know what you think. I'll be at Ask the Experts tonight. If you have more questions, if you have comments, if you want to see things. Some gentleman just came up to me and said, I really would like to see this feature. Let me hear it. We're now thinking about what we're going to do in the vNext release, because we just released SQL 2012. We're thinking about what we're going to do in vNext. Also, if you have feedback, and I'm not hearing it anymore, use Connect. Microsoft Connect really works. If you file a bug there, or if you file a suggestion there, it actually comes into the product team's offices. We actually look at that. So it's not just some forum online that you can do things at. No, if you add it there, if you vote on other things, if you have high votes, you have a big chance that actually gets into the product. So use that to get feedback to us. Of course, go to PowerPivot, download it, start using it. Subtract resources. Okay, and please, we would like to hear what you think, so submit your evaluations. And let's do some questions. Yes? So the question is if you want to use between the different measures and calculated columns. calculated columns do not slow down the model. They might slow down processing. So if you refresh the data, again, it needs to redo it. Measures, on the other hand, can slow down your model. If you create a very large measure which actually loops through your entire table, it might slow down the model when you're using it. No. If you create a measure and you don't use it, then there's no problem. Yes. There's another question there. Yeah. What was the logic behind the color scheme in PowerView?
It's totally different from Excel. It's totally different.
I cannot tell you. I am not from the PowerView team, so I don't know what went on in those decisions. I know there is a colleague of mine from the PowerView team here. I think he has a session tomorrow morning on building stylish PowerView reports. Go to his session and ask him. I cannot help you. Any other questions? Yeah?
Is it possible to publish Power thingy made from Excel into analysis services?
So is it possible to publish a PowerPivot report into analysis? Yes. And I'll be showing you in 40 minutes how you can do that. There are multiple different ways, and I'll be showing them both.
Is there a roadmap for that's defining space in SQL Azure into SharePoint Online?
So is there a roadmap to use PowerPivot and tabular models into SQL Azure?
Yeah, SharePoint Online.
Not right now. There's nothing that we can say yet. Yeah. So nothing I can share. Let's keep it like that. Okay. Another question? Yeah?
In relation to the measures, so in a case where you've got 2 or 3, they look nice and you see them at the bottom. Say in a situation where you ended up that somebody creates a lot of measures.
Yes.
Is there a way to see the sub-measures, or do you just have to scroll down?
Yeah, so you can do it in the diagram view. You can find the measure there, but just hiding all the other columns and finding it there. If you have a large amount of measures, it's pretty complex to actually navigate. So what you can do in the diagram view is go to the diagram view, hide all the other stuff, and find the measure that you want. And then you can actually go to that particular measure. But I agree, it's kind of...
There's no option for a list of measures on
No. Please provide your feedback on Connect. It's something that we like to work on and we like to look into in the future. But customer feedback helps us get traction on those kinds of things. So please provide your feedback on those things. Yeah.
That was your feature with hierarchies for dates, week, month, and so on, you remember? And which is the first day of your week calculation? Monday or Sunday, or is it variables? Because it's different in the US and...
Yes. So in this case, it just uses what Excel is doing. So I think it's dependent on the locale that you're in.
Okay.
So whatever is set on your locale, on your computer, that's what it will use.
So this can result in different results?
So the interesting thing here is it is not recalculated on the fly. So it is, for example, when you import, it only does it on refresh time. So it is transformed into a SQL statement under the covers. So once it is done, it's always kept the same.
So I have to watch it depending on who's working on the data, depending on the station.
Yes. Yes. It's the same as Excel. We try to follow Excel as much as possible in those kinds of things.
We tried PowerPivot. We had a lot of slices we wanted to show on the screen. With Excel, we could use VBA to make slices visible enough. But under the browser, you can't use VBA.
Yeah.
So is there a recommended way of many slices of displaying them or hiding them?
So there is actually a blog post by Rob Colley on PowerPivotPro.com where he actually shows how you can optimize that for many slicers. There's no real good way because this just takes up a lot of surface area. But there are ways to minimize them. And he has a blog post on it on PowerPivotPro.com. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much for your attention. And I'll see you probably in one of the other sessions. So thank you much for your attention.